Okay, so we're going to talk about Revelation 14, and we're actually going to get through the chapter today. I do have to explain the symbol of Babylon and why it's so important. If you're looking for prior lessons, I know some people have questions. I will try to bring some next week, but if you want to take a picture of that right here, and my number is right there. You can also text me. If you just put Revelation in the subject line in big letters so that I see it, I don't know about you, but I get lots of emails about updating my auto insurance and all kinds of junk mail. I probably get so many pieces of junk mail every day in my Yahoo email, so I need to get a better personal email. But anyway, so take a picture of that if you need it. And if you missed it, I'll come back to that in class. Okay, one note, I forgot in my haste last week to discuss, why have I got a symbol within a symbol? Okay, in my haste last week, I did not discuss the word Antichrist. I was talking about the little horn of Daniel, talking about the eighth head of the beast, various things. There is something that John is very concerned with, and in his letters, he mentions an Antichrist. Now, we talk about the man of lawlessness also as being part of that, but it does seem to be not just a spirit of immorality, but a specific office, position, kingdom, something in Revelation that seems to be more defined than just the generalities that we've given it. And I gave a good explanation of that last week, and I can't go back and talk about all of that. But I do want to call out 1 John 2. A lot of people connect this verse to Revelation. Children, it is the last hour, and so many of you have heard the Antichrist is coming. So now many antichrists have come. Therefore, we know that it is the last hour. They went out from us, but they were not of us. For if they had been of us, how would they have continued with us? But they went out, and it might become plain that they are not of us. But you have anointed. But you have been anointed by the Holy One, and you all have knowledge. Now, he is probably writing this before 70 A.D. I think it's leading up to the destruction of Jerusalem. When he says the Antichrist, he seems to be talking in the present tense. He is not talking about the future. He's talking about something that is going on right then in the first century. I think it has to do with the destruction of Jerusalem. Now the word, what's the word that he uses for Antichrist? Well, guess what? It's Antichristo. Okay, so it's not really very helpful in explaining the English. I mean, we've just taken the Greek and superimposed. It is that which is against Christ. It is a rebellion. It is a false teaching. It is people masquerading as Christians, but they have combined their doctrine with that of the world. It is a corruption of all that is good. This is going to live and plague Christianity from now until the end of time. When he says the last hour, it's clearly not the last hour the way we define it. I mean, it's 2,000 years. That's a long time for it to be the last hour. So if he's talking about the last hour in the sense that it was the most recent, just recently, like right now is what he's saying, then that could be an explanation. The other thing is the last hour is the last hour leading up to Jerusalem. So there's nothing here to indicate and point to a specific person. Daniel is kind of what I have to rely on to give us any kind of identity. And to the point where I mentioned last week that the Catholic Church is maybe the little horn of Daniel, and possibly the man of lawlessness in Thessalonians, it's still just an example of false religion, and false religion is a danger to us no matter what. We do have to look at history, and we have to get outside of our 21st century perspective and kind of look at the broad base of history. And we kind of dismiss, discussions against the Catholic Church as something we really shouldn't do, because well, it's, we need to focus just on doing what's right, and we don't need to call out specific groups. But my point to last week was that's not just any group. That's not just, that is not, the Catholic Church has been a very powerful force in history, and whether you agree with it or disagree with it or accept it, you don't want to paint too broad a brush, because it's, you can't say, okay, everyone that has been called a Catholic, they're wrong, they're going to hell. Well, I'm not saying that either, because there was a long time where the Catholic Church was it. They were the only game in town. They were the church, okay? And the way we easily pigeonhole people into certain groups and say, this is good, this is bad, you really can't do that. We're judged on what we do. Yes, there is we are not to associate, we're told not to associate with false teachers. We have to do that. But what I'm saying is that we also have to not associate with false teachers. We also have to engage with the world. We also have to engage with the false, and confront the false teaching. And so, we may be thinking of labels in a way that the apostles were not, per se. So what I'm saying is that the Catholic Church is, when I'm talking about the Catholic Church, I'm really talking about the papacy and the influences within the Catholic Church and within all false religion that continue to plague us. Anything that takes us away from the true doctrine of God is false religion. But as a political force, is something that that's tangible, that's something you can define. The Catholic Church is most likely the little horn that Daniel mentioned. Now, the Antichrist here is just the spirit that is a rebellion. The word Antichrist is not mentioned in Revelation at all. Now, people do apply that to the land beast, and I just think that the land beast is just, it's not something you can define and limit to one person. Okay, Revelation 14, verses 1 through 2. Now, then I looked, and behold, Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000 who had his name and his Father's name written on their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven like the roar of many waters, and like the sound of loud thunder. The voice I heard was like the sound of harpists playing on their harps. Now, all of these symbols have been previously mentioned. We've got the Lamb, that's already been mentioned. We've got the 144,000, that's already been mentioned. We talked about that a few weeks ago. I'm going to go back and review that just a little bit. We've got lots of thunder. We've seen that, and we have the masses, and they've got names on their foreheads. It's an allusion back to those who have been marked by God or marked by the beast. And they were singing a new song before the throne and before the four living creatures. We already mentioned that was in Revelation 5, and before the elders, again, Revelation 5. No one could learn that song except the 144,000 who had been redeemed from the earth. It is those who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. It is those who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These have been redeemed from mankind as firstfruits for God and the Lamb. In their mouth no lie was found, for they are blameless. Now, the 144,000 we've mentioned. The 144,000 is a multiple of 12. 12 times 12. Okay? And the 1,000 is a number of perfection. And we have dismissed the idea that there are only 144,000 that are saved, but that these are representative of the multitude. And it's like saying this, like, these are the saved. They are perfect in the sense that they are complete. They are completed in God. They are perfected by God. They're not perfect in what they've done, but they are perfected in the sense of the original Greek sense of the word that you see in, I think it's Mark 8:48. They are complete. For you are to be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. You are to be complete as your Father in heaven is complete. That is a perfect number. And in the sense that is perfect, we're taking these other round numbers, 12, think of a dozen, and 1,000. These are complete numbers. And so by that looks like a complete number, and that's how you're defining it. It is not he's not saying there's only 144,000 individuals, specifically because where are these individuals coming from? They're coming from the 12 tribes, and the 12 tribes that are listed are they're not just as simple as the 12 tribes of the 12 sons of Joseph, or the 12 tribes of Israel. There's a little bit of a modification. Ephraim is not there, and the tribe of Dan is not there. And why are they not there? Because they introduced false religion to Israel. Dan, now the first person that did it was, of course, Aaron, who brought the calf, the golden calf. But then later in the book of Judges, the tribe of Dan rejects their allocation of land. They find an idol and they take him to the north. Okay, and then by the time you get to Solomon, he has Rehoboam, his older son, and Jeroboam rebels against Rehoboam, and Jeroboam places a false idol in Ephraim, in Samaria, to keep the Israelites from going to the temple to worship. Okay, and then he also places another idol in the north part of the country, in where? Dan. Okay, so by the time you get to John, he lists the 12 tribes, but he pulls out Ephraim, he pulls out Dan, and he replaces them with Levi, which was a tribe, but it was the 13th tribe that sat outside the 12 sons of Jacob, less Joseph. Okay, and Joseph is replaced by Manasseh and Ephraim. Just sort of, kind of like you have, the 12 apostles, but then there's Jesus. Jesus kind of represents the tribe of Levi outside of the 12 tribes, and then there's a replacement of Judas. So there's a little bit of symbolism there as well. So Joseph replaces Ephraim, and Levi replaces Dan in that list. Obviously, we didn't, the 144,000, there's not 12,000 people walking around from the tribe of Naphtali that are going to be saved, and that has to be symbolic. And so if the tribes are symbolic in that list, then I think the number 144,000 is also symbolic. The sound was like that of harps, just like the waters. Waters is a symbol of the people. This rushing waters, it's humanity in tumult. Again, we touched on that as last week, not last week, but in prior lessons. A lot of people have taken this verse these who have not defiled themselves with women, for they are virgins. Now, he is alluding to sexual immorality, okay? But what does that mean, defile myself with women? Okay, I am married. My wife Monica, beautiful woman. She and I have 2 daughters. We have obviously done what we need to do to have daughters. Okay, are we defiled because we are? We're not virgins. Okay, that's not what this verse is saying. Okay, the women here in this verse is not women per se, but it's probably a symbol of religion. Okay, they are pure. Okay, it is not to be interpreted as a condemnation of marriage or the relationship that 2 married people have. But people do take that verse out of context. I want you to know that anytime you eat your Kellogg cereal in the morning, okay, you want to go back and look at what the Kellogg brothers used to think about stuff like this. The reason why you got cereal, why you have cereal? This is random digression, sorry. Cereal is very bland food because Kellogg, I kid you not the business Kellogg, that there were 2 brothers. One was very religious and one was very business minded. but the guy that invented the cereal was not the businessman; it was the religious man. He gave his patients bland cereal because he thought that tasteless food curbed sexual desire. Okay. He also never consummated the marriage with his wife. He did, to his credit, adopted lots of kids, but he didn't think that having kids was good or permitted by Scripture. Very big into Seventh-day Adventism, very big into this end-time theology, and he had some very weird beliefs. And you get cornflakes. And when you drink your Welch's grape juice, I mean, it's a little bit different, but when you drink your Welch's grape juice, that was because they had to take the alcohol out of the grape juice to do what? To serve the Lord's Supper. And so he got good at that. Welch got good at that, and then that's how you ended up. And then he took it and leveraged it and made it a business. But he never went out thinking, I'm going to serve grape juice to the masses for public consumption. That's not what Welch was trying to do. Welch was just trying to have alcohol not included in the Lord's Supper because he thought alcohol was evil. And I just think it's kind of neat how we get things like that. There's reasons for why people believe. There's a reason why you have the products you have. It's out of scope. We won't go any further, but just keep that in mind when you're eating cornflakes. That you need to be careful on how you interpret Scripture. Anyway, so these are the 144,000. Then I saw another angel flying directly overhead with an eternal gospel to proclaim to those who dwell on earth, to every nation and tribe and language and people, entirety, the whole world. Okay. And he said with a loud voice, "Fear God and give him glory, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who has made heaven and earth, the sea and the spring of waters." Again, John is saying that God is in control. Everything is under God. God is going to take care of this. Okay? Then he calls out a specific city. Another angel, a second, followed, saying, "Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She made all nations drink the wine of the passion or wrath of her sexual morality." Now, there's a contrast. The sexual morality is contrasted against the virgins who are pure in the previous verses. And while certainly sexual immorality is wrong and sexual purity is righteousness, that's not that's not entirely what they mean here. It's talking about false teachings. Now, engaging in sexual morality is part of false teaching. So this is not, we're not trying to teach anything about sexual morality. I'm just saying that John is using that as a symbol for all false teaching. Listen, sexual morality is in lockstep with false teaching for the entirety of human history. Okay. So now, why does he say Babylon? Of all the cities that have been considered evil, that have fallen before men, Nineveh, you can even throw Berlin, Tokyo. Of course, those are modern cities. But you go back to there's the ancient cities of the Egyptians. There's the ancient city of Tyre and Sidon, Sodom, Gomorrah. There's the capital of the Persians. Why does he mention Babylon? Why, of all cities, does he mention Babylon? Now, that is the city that did conquer Judah, okay, and they were taken back. And so there is that idea that, okay, this is where the Jews served in captivity, and then they were liberated, and they were taken out of Babylon. That is part of it. But Babylon is more than that. Babylon is not just the city that conquered Judah. Babylon is the site of the original rebellion against God after the flood. And everything that comes after that. All the false teaching in the world today is sort of a rehash or another iteration of the false teachings that came out of Babylon. The Tower of Babel is an historical event. It really happened. Just like Jonah and the whale, Jonah and the fish, really happened. But it's also an analogy to describe human history and things that come after that. In the case of Jonah, that is, he is clearly a symbol of rebellious Israel. He does not want to bring salvation to the Gentiles, and he spends 3 nights in the belly of a fish, and he's resurrected, and he then delivers salvation to the Gentiles. Well, that's what happened. Jesus spent 3 days and 3 nights in the tomb. He says it in Matthew 12:40. And he did it in Israel, but it was Israel that became the source of salvation for the whole world. The opposite of that is Babylon. Babylon is the original rebellion. Okay? Now, what do we know about Babylon? I have the wrong heading in here. It should say Genesis 8 through 10, excuse me. Cush fathered Nimrod. He was the first on earth to be a mighty man. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel. And he starts with Babel because I think Babel is the first city in that list. Okay? And generally when the Bible lists things out like that, that's the order they were founded or written. Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land he went into Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the great city. Now pay attention to that phrase. That is the great city. Because you're going to see it a lot in the next few chapters. Fallen is Babylon, and all the carved images of her gods he has shattered to the ground. O my threshed and winnowed one, what I have heard from the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, I announce to you. This is Isaiah 28 through 10, and he repeats himself in 22. Nimrod. Who is Nimrod? He is the great-grandson of Noah. He finds the city of Babylon. Nimrod up to the 20th century was generally regarded as something powerful and a tyrant. Now we call someone a Nimrod, we think of him kind of as a fool, and we can blame Bugs Bunny for that. Okay? Because he called Elmer Fudd Nimrod. You're the great mighty hunter. He's making Bugs Bunny is making a scriptural reference here. And it gets kind of embedded, and we forget, we call people Nimrod because of what, we watch Bugs Bunny on the cartoon. That word was not used that way until Bugs Bunny came along. So, Nimrod is the mighty hunter. The reason I had that ship there is because that was a ship, I can't remember his name, the guy that discovered the Arctic, or tried to get to the North Pole. His ship was actually called Nimrod. Babylon is founded by Nimrod before 3000 BC. It is the cradle of civilization. It sits on the Euphrates, where the Tigris comes within a few miles. So the entire land is flat, and in that land we can produce this wonderful crop called wheat. Okay? And wheat is a big deal. Because what can you do to wheat? You can pound it into a powder we call flour, and you can store it, you can keep it dry, and you can grow it all you want, but then you can feed yourself over the winter. Okay? And you can save it, as you produce enough, you can not only do that, but you can save it for years out in the future. Wheat, it's that you're tipping the scale just slightly enough and changing the trajectory of society. It is because wheat is there, you're able to start civilization. Whereas you don't have to spend all your time foraging for food. You can actually concentrate your resources, grow enough wheat to feed your society, and do other things, and innovate, and share technology. We depend on farmers, but thank goodness we don't all have to farm, right? Like, we're not all farming out. We have, we're accountants, engineers, lawyers, doctors, craftsmen, various kinds of trades. We do all of that because we have mechanized our farming production. And that's the crux of civilization. That's the crux of, that's the purpose of civilization. That's the purpose of technology. And around technology, and we have developed a lot of the mores, the false teachings that get wrapped around technology in our society. We have what God believes, and we have what society believes. Now, just to show you where Babylon sits, it is basically the heart of civilization. Now, there's other rivers, too, that became very important, like the Ganges in India, the Yellow River in China, also the Nile in Egypt. But Babylon in the Bible, as far as the biblical narrative is concerned, this is the original rebellion against God. Okay? Now, who is Nimrod? He built the Tower of Babel. He's the same as Ninus, the first king of Assyria. And Assyria and Babylon, by the way, are not, they have the same origins. Okay? They both sit in the Fertile Crescent in the valley of the Tigris and the Euphrates. And there's various cities, and the two most important ones ended up being Babylon. Diodorus said that Nimrod subjected Babylon before it was a city, which makes sense because Nimrod is a great hunter of men, as it's mentioned in Genesis chapter 10. The Arabs say that he fell off his tower. Others say that wild boars killed him. Others say that he was executed for idolatry. But one thing that we know about Nimrod from all the different narratives is that he fell off of his. He did build a tower, even in the Assyrian and the Babylonian narratives, and in the other traditions like the Arabs. He built a tower. He died. At some point, he was mutilated, and well, guess what? Towers. In any false religion, all across the ancient world, towers are built. Okay? The Tower of Babel was essentially something very much like a pyramid. And I really do think that when they're talking about Babylon, a lot of people say, well, he's talking about Rome. I don't think so. I think we're talking about all of false teaching. And is Rome a part of that? Yes, it certainly is. Rome is a part of that, but it's not just the city of Rome. Nimrod is the source of Baal. If you really go, I know I don't have time to really go into this. You're going to have to sort of take my word for it. But Baal, Nimrod dies, and when he dies, his wife Semiramis is pregnant. Now, this is the theory that people like Clinton Gill, other religious scholars, have. That's actually very common. You may not have heard it much, but this is a very common theory among religious scholars in places that you would find friendly to sound doctrine. The theory is that Nimrod dies, his wife Semiramis is pregnant, and to maintain her power, she then gives birth to a baby, who she says is basically Nimrod. Nimrod is reborn through her. It is a corruption of the Messianic story that we see in Genesis. Okay? After all, this was promised that it was the seed of woman that would save man. And she becomes the foundation and prototype of Asher. Okay. Now, there's lots of different versions of Baal, but his name basically means Lord. In all these stories, Baal is the son. He's being reborn. He's rebelling against Bel, B-E-L. We always say Baal. I always try to say Baal because Bel is actually another god, B-E-L. He's the sky god. And Baal is constantly dying and is constantly being reborn. This gets tied to the seasons, and this is why idolatry is tied up into the worship of the sun. It is why idolatry is tied up into moon worship, because they are constantly following the calendar, because they're using that calendar to do what? Organize their agriculture. And to get people to cooperate and to build and work together, Nimrod, the mighty hunter of men, rounds up these people, organizes them into society, and makes them do what they want. And we see this, it's a theme. Even we see it in Ecclesiastes chapter 5, verse 8 to 9. Do not marvel at the oppression of the poor in the field. Okay, before there are lords above them, and there are lords above them, and above them are lords higher still. And at the end of the day, above them there's a king who is committed to what? Cultivated fields. Okay? The societies are very concerned about agriculture and organizing their society, providing for their people. But to do that and to make people do what they do, they have to resort to violence, and they have to resort to making people do what they do not want to do. And to justify that, they go outside the box and find false religion and some kind of connection to the supernatural that they control, that they justify. Okay? And we see this over and over and over again in all mythology, all over the world, even today in secular society. Okay? The earth is angry. And we know we have the power to connect with the earth and provide for it. Provide for you, but you have to do what we say. Okay? It's the same old story. When you look at the origin stories about in the different religions, I'll just give you an example. In the story, Nimrod, he apparently died. He's mutilated by a boar. If you go back and you look at Elijah, when he's fighting with the false prophets, they're mutilating themselves, they're cutting themselves, because why? Because that's what happened to Nimrod. Okay, they're making themselves like Nimrod. They're chopped up, and he's chopped up into pieces, and she sort of has to reassemble him, and then he is reborn through her. And there's various flavors and various corruptions of the story. But if you know anything about mythology, Isis, the Egyptian goddess, she has to go to the underworld and find Osiris and reassemble him. Ezekiel talks about Tammuz, okay? We are mourning for the loss of Tammuz. She has to retrieve him from the underworld, and she mourns for him for 40 days, and she does this right before the spring equinox. We know this is Lent, okay? Even the story, if you know anything about Greek mythology, you've seen Orion, Artemis. She's the Greek goddess. He is attacked. He is mutilated. In this case, he's actually attacked by a scorpion, not a boar. But she places him in the sky in various pieces. So this is so Semiramis is in. So Baal ends up becoming the son. In almost all origin stories, there's a rebellion against the father. In Greek mythology, Saturn rebels against Uranus, kills him. But then also there's another version where Zeus rebels against Saturn. Okay, and so Baal becomes that perverted version of Messiah, that he is going to attack God and allow his followers to participate in all forms of unrighteousness. But he is going to bring them salvation. Whereas we, as Christians, know that God will protect us from destruction by forgiving us of our unrighteousness, but we have to resist the unrighteousness, not indulge in it. And that is the nature of all false religion even today, that we want permission and even approval to behave in this unrighteousness. Semiramis becomes the prototype for all various versions of the heroines and other religions. I won't go into all of those. You look at Molech, Chemosh, and by the way, Chemosh is a corruption of Cush, who is the father of Nimrod. Cronus, the Greek god of hunt and harvest, Saturn, Dionysus. These are all, I could go on, these are all various versions of the same story being reiterated over and over again. And here's Ezekiel. Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord, and behold, there the women sat weeping for Tammuz. And he said to me, "Have you seen this, O son of man? You will see greater abominations than these." So when we look at the story about the baby being reborn through the mother, okay, it's a corruption of the Messianic story in the book of Genesis, and it replaces the true story of Christ. And you can see that even within the teachings of the Catholic Church, how Mary basically becomes Asherah. Okay, now I know it's harsh, and I don't have time to deal with all of that in this out of scope, but I really do think that's what John is saying when he's talking about Babylon. He is going back to the original idolatry It was introduced by Nimrod 6,000 years ago. Okay? Now, I've already mentioned some of this, but again, there's this idea that you're going to have to sacrifice, and by sacrificing, it's usually the government of the times, the tyranny. Okay, and when I say government, I'm not talking about your local councilman. Okay, here in America in the year 2024, but things were different back then. He's gathered. They have to sacrifice to the gods, and in so doing, the people that are controlling the religion at the top are receiving all of the goods. They're receiving all of the taxes. They're receiving all of the sacrifices, all of the meat, the produce. Is being channeled into the centralized control of society. The common themes of Baal: he's always angry with his father. He intercedes for man against the Creator. He fights him in the sky, or he fights him in the underworld. He is burdened. Man is burdened by his own birth. Man is restrained by the rules and morality, and he will. But Baal is going to liberate man from restriction and allow him to indulge in every sin. He is limited in his power, but he still conquers death. And again, this is a perverted version of the Messianic prophecy. There is this again. Mankind is trying to organize society so they can participate in this false religion, and it's a cycle that feeds on itself. What does the false religion do? What does the land beast tell everyone to do? It tells them to worship the first beast. Tyranny, false religion. Tyranny, false religion. Back and forth. Okay? And another angel, a third, followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured out full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, these worshippers of the beast and its image, and whoever receives the mark of its name. And the mark denotes doing the will of the beast, participating in sin, and wherever there is greed, indifference to God, hatred of Christ, and the worship of man, there also is Babylon the Great. And that is a quote from Kaufman. The images in fire and sulfur and the wine of wrath represent traditional symbols of destruction that are very common. So here is a call for the endurance of all the saints, those who keep the commandments of God and their faith in Jesus and the faith of Jesus. And I heard a voice from heaven saying, write this, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from now on. Blessed indeed, says the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, for their deeds follow them. And those who die in Him achieve a spiritual union. In Him appears 160 times in the New Testament. And then words like now on and henceforth suggest that there is a time factor, but it really is a case of cause and effect. And we know that actions matter, whether we obey or not. And then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and seated on the cloud, one like Son of Man. Now we're wrapping up the third vision here, okay? This is the judgment. And seated on the cloud, one like a Son of Man, with a golden crown on his head and a sharp sickle in his hand. And another angel came out of the temple, calling with a loud voice to him who said in the cloud, put in your sickle and reap, for the hour to reap has come, for the harvest of the earth is fully ripe. Now this is again where we've seen the sickle. We saw the sickle as on the fourth horseman, or not the fourth horseman, which is death and judgment. So he who sat on the crowd swung his sickle across the earth, and the earth was reaped. Again, this is the third vision. It is showing that God is in control. Final judgment is rendered, and we're going to start the fourth vision in chapter 15. Scholars disagree on whether this is Jesus or not. He is not identified as an angel, but it's probably Jesus. The cloud is obviously associated with God's presence, and is showing the time of the earth has been fulfilled, and there is no clue when this will be. But just we know that the beast will oppress until the end. Okay? Now we see the word grapes of wrath. We've heard that movie. What's Steinbeck alluding to? He's alluding to the wine press in Revelation 14. And then another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, the angel who had authority over the fire, and he called with a loud voice to the one who had the sharp sickle, "Put in your sickle and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe." That it just, the seasons are over. The time of the earth is over. This is the final judgment. No matter what happens within all the years of human history, at the end, God is in control and He's going to take it back. So the angel swung his sickle across the earth and gathered the great harvest of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood flowed from the winepress as high as a horse's bridle for 1,600 stadia, about 184 miles, and a stadium was about 670 feet. So blood would flow for 184 miles. Now, I will touch base. I'll circle back and mention some of these symbols, numerical symbols later. But let's just talk in general about the symbols. There's one sickle. There's one reaping. The harvest is gathered to God. Others are thrown into the winepress. And the image of blood flowing for 180 miles does not lend itself to the idea of a permissive God. He does demand justice and does demand obedience. The distance is symbolic, but no one can offer a viable answer, probably because the distance between 2 points of religious significance, it's probably very significant to the people of the time. But I'll get into the speculation about the distances involved in this flow of blood. But this is basically the judgment. And it's the same judgment at the end of the second vision and at the end of the first vision and versions 4, 5, and 6. It's not a separate event. Because it just as John, he's telling this story, he's going back and he's mentioning other symbols from other visions, but they are not sequential. They're repetitive. He's just taking a different perspective. And next week, we will go into the fourth vision. Scott Huff is going to teach y'all next week on chapter 15. And we're going to do a chapter a week until the end of November, and we'll get done. And in so doing, the focus of the third vision was really the first beast. Now, the second beast was mentioned, and we were talking about false religion, but the fourth vision, false religion, is going to become even more important as the symbol, and that's going to be the focus of John's fourth vision. And I say fourth vision, let me put a caveat on that. It seems like he wrote Revelation in one swoop, but these visions he had back to back. They were all, in a sense, one vision, but they have components. So anyway, again, if you have any questions, just let me know, and I'll see you in 2 weeks, and Scott will be here next week. Okay? All right, thank you.